The United States of America has one of the highest gun homicide rates in the entire world, a fact that rose to top of mind this week when a shooter opened fire at the Annunciation Church in Minneapolis during a grade school mass, killing 2 children and injuring 15 other children and 3 adults. The gun homicide rate in the United States is 26 times that of other high-income countries, according to analysis by the gun safety organization Everytime. See the line at the bottom? Like it looks like it's the base of the whole graphic? No, that's actually America's gun homicide rate. According to the Commonwealth Fund, quote, death rates due to physical violence by firearm in the United States are closer to rates seen in countries experiencing active conflict. In other words, the U.S. can be nearly as deadly as a war zone. I spoke with the Florida Congressman Maxwell Frost after the Minneapolis shooting, where he reminded me that guns are the #1 killer of children in the U.S.
And I like to spell it out even clearer for parents especially. If God forbid your child died tomorrow, the most likely reason would be because of bullets. That's the country we live in.
What's President Trump's answer to all this? To close the White House Office on Gun Violence Prevention, to eliminate more than half of federal funding for community violence intervention programs. And in March, the Department of Health and Human Services announced that it has cut nearly 10,000 HHS jobs, including entire teams from the CDC's Injury Center, which collect data on violent deaths and injuries. He also eliminated $820 million in grants for organizations focused more broadly on crime reduction and public safety. Among the programs cut, $13 million for law enforcement in rural communities used to investigate sexual assault and curb child abuse, $3.5 million for a program that brought together law enforcement, community leaders, and researchers to address violent crime, a program that Trump had actually previously called a success. $169 million for community-based programs that empower local leaders to de-escalate conflicts before they turn violent. And while he's actively dismantling these programs, he's threatening to deploy National Guard troops to Chicago, where violent crime actually fell by more than 22% in the first half of this year, according to the Chicago police, to patrol the streets of Chicago as if it's actually a war zone. The Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, has warned against military intervention in the city. This is his message to Donald Trump.
You can delay justice for a time, but history shows you cannot prevent it from finding you eventually. If you hurt my people, nothing will stop me, not time or political circumstance, from making sure that you face justice under our constitutional rule of law.
For more on this discussion, I'm joined by the Democratic State Representative Justin Jones of Tennessee. He was briefly expelled from the state legislature in 2023 for violating decorum around a gun violence protest that he led in the wake of the deadly mass shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville. Gregory Jackson also joins me. He was previously the deputy director of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. He helped oversee the federal response to mass casualty events and helped coordinate federal resources. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Brother Jones, let me just start with you because I want to remind people identify you as sort of a progressive activist. There's nothing actually particularly progressive about wanting children not to die from gun violence at school. That's not an ideology.
I mean, this is not, and this is, this week has brought back flashbacks of 2023 when 3 9-year-olds were killed and 3 adults at the Covenant School here in Nashville, which led us to protests on the House floor. The difference is that now we have a presidential administration that is cruel and callous and that has more outrage about the changing of the Cracker Barrel logo than they do about changing the policies that allow our children to be gunned down in school or while praying in a sanctuary at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. I mean, this is cruelty and we should be outraged. I don't know if I have any tears left, but I do have anger and I do have righteous indignation that this is the America that we've been bequeathed by this Trump regime.
Gregory, let's talk about this because, there's always a sense that nothing can be done, which is not true. Representative Jones has demonstrated that, and March for Our Lives has demonstrated that, and lots of activity around this country, including a bipartisan bill that was passed a few years ago, demonstrate that. But we still get more thoughts and prayers than we get solutions.
Well, look, this is still the leading cause of death for youth in America. It's the leading cause of death for newly disabled Americans now. And also, it's actually surpassed childbirth complications to be the leading cause of death for pregnant women in America. So this is still a very present crisis But what we do know is that we have solutions. We know that when we invest in communities, when we invest in violence prevention, when we invest in crime gun intelligence, that we can reduce violence, especially when we combine that with holding the gun industry accountable. And that's exactly what we did in the Biden-Harris administration. We shut down over 400 gun stores that were violating the law. We locked up over 600 gun traffickers. We shut down the largest ghost gun manufacturer in the country. And we made sure that those who are profiting off of putting weapons of war in our backyards are being held accountable as aggressively as possible. And that led to a 20% reduction in mass shootings. And so we know it works.
Yeah, literally it has worked. And that's interesting, Brother Jones, because the accountability issue is that a lot of people in the gun industry have been shielded by the fact that there is this so-called membership organization called the NRA, which is the lobby for the industry. It's a protection racket, really, for politicians. But in fact, when you look at the data, there are people with mental health struggles all over the world. There are people with disabilities all over the world. There are people who play video games all over the world. And nobody has the problem the way we have it in the United States. So it might actually be about the guns.
I mean, that's exactly it. And, I want to take it a step further and say that, I want to bring theology into this because you have all these people want to give thoughts and prayers after a shooting, but I was a minister, and that is a form of theological malpractice when you pray for something that you have the power to change. There's an African proverb that says when you pray, you move your hands and feet. What we're seeing is a form of idolatry where we're willing to worship the lives of our children to appease the profits of the gun industry. In Tennessee, after the mass shooting at the Covenant School, the only law Republicans passed that year was to protect gun manufacturers from litigation. That's what they did after children were killed in a school. It is cruel, it is shameful, it is immoral, and it is something that is going to be a dark stain on American history that we've allowed this to go on for so long unchallenged. And we have the power to change things. And I would say to my colleagues who serve in government bodies that we keep your thoughts and prayers, keep your tweets. If you want to address gun violence, you don't need a tweet. What you need is a mirror. You have the power to change things. You have the power to take action.
Yeah. Well, this is also big business, right? Like last year, the gun industry made more profit than Nike. I mean, there are more gun stores than there are McDonald's in our country. And now the Trump administration is getting in on action. I mean, Donald Trump Jr. is on the board of Grab a Gun. He's trying to literally create an Amazon to sell firearms. And so it should be no surprise that President Trump is protecting an industry that now his family is profiting from. And so we know that we have to hold this industry accountable. It's one of the least regulated industries in our country, but we also know it's one of the most dangerous ones. And so that's something that we have to keep pressure on. And we also have to recognize that this is more than a safety for Trump. This is about making money, about appeasing the folks that have his back, and frankly, sacrificing our children for the sake of dollars.
Exactly. What we saw in Tennessee was that this was not an issue of left or right, but it was a moral issue of right and wrong. We had Republican mothers, one of whom I turned 30 on Monday, was at my birthday party, and is who I've become a dear friend with, who are Republicans who said we need to do something to protect our children. There's common sense solutions like universal background checks, red flag laws, safe storage laws that the majority of Americans, both Republican, Democrat, and Independent, support. And I want to add, too, that these folks are constitutionally inconsistent when we look at the Trump administration, because you have folks saying, well, this is about our right to bear arms and our Constitution. At the same time, his solution is to send troops to American cities against the will of local communities and state governments, which is unconstitutional. So these are people who don't care about the Constitution. They're morally inconsistent, and they're constitutionally, just reprehensible. They are running rupture of our Constitution. So these are folks who are not serious, but instead want to foment violence in America and will profit off the violence in America and foment division. And this is their solution. These are not people who have empathy or govern through empathy or compassion, but they govern through cruelty and callousness. And that's what we're seeing in America right now.
Now, Gregory, some of those improvements that you made at the office of at the White House, the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, they're able to be done without infringing on what some people think are their Second Amendment rights.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, our focus was not on individuals' rights. It was focused on keeping the gun industry accountable. And one of the major things is that we made sure there was a zero tolerance, that if a gun store or a gun dealer violates the law, they lose their license. But guess what Donald Trump did? On day one, he shut down our office, and within weeks, he invited those violating gun stores to come back into business, sent an email and put it on the website, and ended that zero tolerance policy. And we think that, look, how we solve this crisis is we keep illegal guns from flowing into our communities, and we have to start at the source. And so none of our work was focused downstream on individuals. Look, I'm a gun owner. I've been a hunter since I was a young man. But I'm also a survivor of gun violence, and I know firsthand how crazy this can be and how traumatic it can be. And you can have both. You can have your right to bear your arms and protect your family, but we also can't have an industry that's running amok and causing chaos that literally is leading our country into this spiral.
I mean, that's it. What got me involved, I was 17 when Trayvon Martin was killed in Sanford, Florida by neighborhood watchmen because of stand your ground laws. And every year we've seen this increase of laws that protect the gun industry, that proliferate guns in our communities. We saw some progress because of the movements, particularly led by young people. But this Trump administration has done every advancement we've made, and it's an insult. And then they come to our communities and say, well, we were going to just pray with you when we're PREI, NG, preying on your community and exploiting them and allowing these industries to continue to profit and to protect them over the lives of our children. I think the reason I'm angry is because you see even communities that have been, victims of gun violence re-traumatized every time this happens. And it's a cycle that just keeps happening. And then you feel insane because you're like, well, we've done this before. We thought that would bring change. Uvalde, Buffalo, what happened here in Nashville? It's how many deaths does it take? How many children's lives are worth the cost of short-term profit for the gun industry? No American wants to live this way. We don't have to live this way. This is a policy choice. This is not about God and prayer. This is about a man-made system that is uniquely American, that is uniquely definitive of our current moment in American history, and it's shameful. And none of us should sleep peacefully while this is happening. We should be unsettled and disturbed by this reality for our children in America.